Engineers laughed at homeless woman's idea until she crushed the billionaire's crisis rain, swept through the city in restless silver streaks, bouncing off rusted gutters and pooling at the edges of cracked sidewalks. Beneath an overpass, where the hum of traffic echoed like distant machinery, Tiana Hayes crouched over a notebook so worn that the pages had turned soft as cloth. She shielded it beneath her jacket, whispering to herself as if the rain might eavesdrop on her thoughts. She had been an engineering student one stop of her class at a technical college on the city's south side. Her professors called her the turbine girl because she loved airflow mechanics. That was before the scholarship vanished when her mother fell ill, before she sold her laptop to pay medical bills, before the eviction. Now the overpass was her laboratory, and a stub of pencil was her only tool. She drew lines across the paper loops, channels, fins, and blades. Her concept wasn't just another wind turbine. It was a live network of microturbines, small enough to fit in subway tunnels and along highways, capturing the wasted wind created by movement itself. "The city breathes," she murmured. "We just have to listen." A gust blew through the tunnel, flipping the page. She pressed her palm against it and smiled faintly. "See, proof." From across the street, a man paused. Andre Louis polished shoes, pressed suit, and an umbrella that cost more than her monthly rent once had. He had just left the towering headquarters of Lewis Dynamics, the renewable energy company where he worked as a senior engineer. He often passed this overpass on his route home, but had never stopped until tonight. He noticed the way she scribbled, not with chaos, but with purpose. Curiosity won over caution. "You actually building something, or drawing graffiti?" he called out, half teasing. Tiana looked up, wary but not intimidated. "Depends who's asking." "An engineer," he said, stepping closer. "And you?" "Just someone with ideas nobody wants to hear." Andre tilted his head, amused. "That's a big claim." "Big ideas usually sound ridiculous at first," she said, closing the notebook halfway. The rain hissed between them. For a second, he saw more than a homeless woman. He saw focus, intellect, defiance. "What's the idea?" he asked. She hesitated, then flipped the notebook open. "Modular airflow turbines. They use wasted pressure from city traffic to generate clean power. Every tunnel, every vent, every overpass could be part of the grid." Andre chuckled softly. "You think a few tunnel fans can power a city?" "I think the right design can make waste useful," she replied. "You spend millions building wind farms in deserts, but you forget the cities breathe too." Her words caught him off guard. "You're serious?" "I don't have time to joke," she said simply. "Every hour I spend cold could have been spent building this." Andre looked at the drawing again. The airflow channels made sense. The fin curvature wasn't random. There was elegance in the simplicity. Still, he was trained to trust data, not intuition. "Interesting," he said finally. "But without capital or equipment, ideas like this stay on paper." Tiana's voice softened but didn't break. "That's what they told every person who ever changed something." Andre felt the sting of truth in that, yet pride made him defensive. "Well, good luck," he muttered, stepping back. She shrugged. "Luck's for gamblers. I work with numbers." He walked away, unsettled. Something about her tone lingered like static in the air. He didn't know her name, but her eyes clear sharp. Fearless stayed with him long after he vanished into the city lights. Hours later, as the storm eased, Tiana tucked the notebook beneath her makeshift pillow. She had no idea that the man who dismissed her would soon be forced to depend on the idea. She had birthed from rain and hunger above her. The overpass groaned as a truck thundered past, the gust lifting her last page into the night. The sketch drifted across the street, plastering itself against a lamppost outside Lewis Dynamics. Fate, patient and invisible, had begun to move its pieces. The morning after the storm, the city woke up glistening and restless. The headquarters of Lewis Dynamics rose over the skyline like a gleaming fortress of glass and steel, reflecting the wet streets below. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and overworked ambition. Andre Lewis stood before a conference table littered with schematics, his tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. The company was under siege from within. A series of failed energy prototypes had bled investors dry, and their billionaire founder, Victor Greaves, was threatening to cut staff. The task: create a low-cost, high-output energy recovery system before the next investor summit in 2 weeks. Andre pinched the bridge of his nose. "We've tried everything," he muttered. Even the nanoblade concept failed thermal regulation. His assistant Rosa approached holding a damp, folded sketch inside a transparent sleeve. "This came in from the janitorial crew," she said. "They found it near the front entrance." Andre frowned, distracted. "Probably trash." "Maybe," Rosa said, shrugging. "But look." He took the page and froze. Those hand-drawn turbine curves, the pressure collection loops, the asymmetric fins. He'd seen them before. Under the overpass, his pulse quickened. "Run this through the modeling program." Rosa blinked. It's hand-drawn. Just do it." Within hours, the lab filled with quiet awe. The simulation ran smoother than any of their corporate designs. The airflow capture rate doubled efficiency projections. The model was imperfect but alive, self-balancing under variable pressure. Andre leaned forward, eyes wide. "She did it," he whispered. "Who?" Rosa asked. He hesitated. "Someone everyone ignored." By late afternoon, word reached Victor Greaves. The billionaire burst into the lab like a storm himself. Silver hair, sharp suit, eyes gleaming with practiced charm. "You're telling me this miracle came from where, exactly?" Andre swallowed. "A freelance engineer. No affiliation. She's off the grid." "Find her," Victor snapped. "If this design works, it's worth billions." Andre didn't move. "Sir, it's her intellectual property. Then buy it. Or buy her. That's how innovation works." Andre's stomach twisted. He nodded stiffly and left. That evening, he drove back to the overpass, headlights slicing through the drizzle. He found her exactly where she'd been, crouched beside a barrel fire, a blanket draped over her shoulders, sketching something new. "Didn't think you'd come back," she said without looking up. Andre held out the page. "Your design works. I ran the tests." She looked up, disbelief flickering in her eyes. "What?" "The airflow pattern. It stabilizes perfectly under variable loads. You created something the rest of us couldn't." Tiana set her pencil down slowly. "So now you believe me." "I believe in results," he said, trying to sound professional. "But this could save my company. Maybe the entire city." She studied him, unsure whether to laugh or curse. "You mean it could save your billionaire boss's portfolio?" Andre exhaled. "Look, I know how this sounds, but if you come with me, we can build a prototype together. You'll get credit." Tiana's lips curved in a bitter smile. "Credit? I've seen what that means. I had credit once, a student ID, a scholarship. Now I have none of those things." He crouched beside her. "You built this out of nothing. Don't let it die under a bridge." Silence hung heavy. The fire crackled between them, smoke curling into the damp air. Finally, she said, "If I come, it's on my terms. My name on the patent, my control over design. I've been invisible long enough." Andre nodded. "Deal." She looked at him for a long moment, gauging sincerity. "Why do you care?" He hesitated. "Because I've spent years building machines that don't help anyone. Maybe this one actually could." A faint smile touched her lips. "Then let's see if the world can handle an idea born in the rain." 2 days later, they walked side by side into the pristine lobby of Lewis Dynamics. She in borrowed jeans and a hoodie. He in his usual suit. The receptionist's eyes widened as Andre swiped his badge. Who's she? Andre said evenly, the mind behind your next energy revolution. They passed through the glass doors, leaving the whispers behind. Tiana felt every gaze, every judgment, every memory of rejection. But for the first time in years, she walked not as a beggar, but as a builder. She looked up at the massive mural of the company motto, innovation through vision. Her lips curled slightly. Let's see if they mean it. When the elevator doors opened onto the top floor of Lewis Dynamics, the sound hit Tiana first, a low hum of air conditioning and money. Every surface gleamed, every step echoed. She gripped the strap of her borrowed satchel as Andre guided her down the hallway. Boardrooms through there, he said quietly. They're not exactly gentle. She glanced at him. Neither am I. Inside, 12 people waited behind a slab of polished glass. Holographic models floated above the table. At the head sat Victor Greaves, silver hair perfectly combed, smile razor-sharp so, he said, steepling his fingers. This is the mystery engineer who dropped genius in our doorway. Tiana met his gaze. The homeless woman, you mean? A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the room. Victor didn't flinch. Let's skip the social experiment. Mr. Lewis claims your design can double our efficiency. Convince me. Andre tapped a key, and the room darkened. The simulation bloomed into color, a miniature tunnel lined with turbines, wind currents swirling like liquid light. Tiana stepped forward, voice steady. You're wasting pressure differentials across your transit system, she began. Every moving train pushes air that dissipates into heat. My turbines capture that momentum, store it, and feed it back into the grid. She pointed at the model. Think of it as breathing with purpose. For several minutes, she spoke the language of engineering, airflow coefficients, adaptive fins, modular scaling. Andre watched the faces around the table shift from skepticism to fascination. When the simulation ended, Victor leaned back. Impressive, he admitted. But theory and practice are different beasts. What makes you think you can build this? Tiana didn't hesitate. Because I already did. Small scale, out of scrap and stolen fan blades. Murmurs erupted. Victor raised an eyebrow. Stolen. Borrowed from a junkyard, she corrected. Returned, the good ones. Andre smothered a grin. Victor's smile thinned. Let's say this works. What exactly do you want from us? Partnership, she said. Not pity, not a token paycheck. My name on the patent, a fair share of profits, and a seat at the table when decisions are made. The board exchanged glances. Some amused, some impressed. One man scoffed. You expect corporate equity after showing us a drawing? Tiana's eyes didn't waver. You expect salvation from someone you left outside in the rain. Seems fair. The room fell silent. Even Victor's expression faltered for a beat before he recovered his composure. Mr. Lewis, prototype it. I want field data in a week. After the meeting, Andre caught up with her near the elevators. You handled them like a pro. She exhaled shakily. You mean like someone pretending not to be terrified? He smiled. That too. As they stepped into the elevator, he asked, why didn't you take offense at Greaves calling you a social experiment? Tiana looked out over the skyline through the glass wall. Because experiments prove what's possible. I'm fine being one of those. They worked day and night. The lab became a blur of metal scraps, solder smoke, and coffee. Andre watched in awe as Tiana improvised fixes no textbook could predict, shaping fan blades with heat from a torch, adjusting angles by instinct. You really don't use CAD? He asked. She grinned. My brain's the software. Cheaper license. He laughed for the first time in weeks. One evening, as they calibrated sensors, he asked quietly, what made you start thinking about wind? Tiana paused. When you're homeless, wind's the one thing you can't shut out. It follows you everywhere. I decided to make friends with it. Andre nodded slowly. That's poetic and brilliant. Don't say poetic, she teased. Makes it sound like luck. It's math. A week later, they rolled the prototype onto the testing platform. The turbine was rough, wires exposed, but when the fans roared to life, the output meter spiked clean and steady. The room filled with a rising hum, the sound of success. Rosa whooped. It's stable. Andre turned to Tiana. You did it. We did it, she thought, but said nothing. Victor entered mid-cheer, eyes narrowing at the sight. So the miracle breathes, he said. Excellent. We'll prep for investor demonstrations. Tiana stepped forward. And the pattern? He waved a dismissive hand. Legal will handle the paperwork. Focus on the science. Something in his tone chilled her. I want confirmation in writing. Victor smiled thinly. Of course, we're all on the same team. But as he turned away, Tiana caught Andre's uneasy glance. They both knew that in the language of corporations, team often meant ownership transfer. Later that night, while the others celebrated at a bar, Tiana stayed behind, staring at the turbine spinning softly in the lab's half-light. Its rhythmic whir reminded her of breathing. She touched the metal casing and whispered, "Don't let them take your soul." Andre returned quietly. "You don't trust them." She shook her head. "I've learned the hard way that people in suits only remember your name when it's convenient." He leaned against the table. "I'll make sure they do." "Promise?" she asked. He met her eyes. "Yeah, promise." Outside, the city lights shimmered like scattered stars reflected on wet asphalt. For the first time, Tiana let herself hope, not for pity or luck, but for a future she had engineered with her own hands. What she didn't know was that in Victor Greaves's private office, a patent submission already sat on his desk. The name, Lewis Dynamics, typed neatly above a blank line where hers should have been. The presentation day dawned clear and sharp, the kind of morning that made the city's towers look cleaner than they were. Inside the Lewis Dynamics auditorium, journalists, investors and government officials milled around a stage flanked by banners that read a new breath of power. The hum of conversation was electric. Backstage, Tiana Hayes tightened the cuff of her borrowed blazer. The fabric still smelled faintly of solder smoke from the nights in the lab. Andre Lewis stood beside her, scrolling through slides on a tablet. "You ready?" he asked Reddy's relative. She said, "But yeah," he smiled. "After today you won't need to sleep under bridges ever again." Before she could answer, Victor Greaves swept in, radiating confidence and cologne. "Showtime," he said. "We'll start with me. Then Andre covers the data. Then you, Ms. Hayes, get the honor of unveiling the prototype." Tiana's stomach tightened. He hadn't mentioned the patent once since their last meeting. "It's filed?" she asked. Victor's eyes flicked to her, perfectly unreadable. "All taken care of." The lights dimmed. Music pulsed. Cameras flashed as Victor strode on stage to applause. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "Lewis Dynamics has always been at the frontier of renewable innovation. Today we reveal the technology that will redefine urban energy." He gestured to the turbine behind the curtain. "A design perfected by our engineering team under my direction." Tiana froze. Under my direction. Her name didn't appear on the opening slide, nor on the second. Her throat tightened. Andre glanced at her, jaw clenched. When his turn came, he hesitated before speaking. The other core concept came from a collaboration, he began, choosing each word carefully. A fresh perspective that challenged our systems. Victor shot him a warning look. The billionaire's smile never faltered, but his voice cut through the applause like glass. "And that's why leadership matters, Mr. Lewis. Vision guides collaboration." The audience laughed politely. When it was finally Tiana's turn, she stepped up to the mic, palms sweating. She could have walked off. She could have let Victor own the moment. But something inside her rebelled. She spoke clearly. I designed this turbine under a bridge 3 months ago, using scrap metal and a broken fan, not in a lab, not under anyone's direction, because energy belongs to everyone. The crowd went silent. Cameras zoomed in. Victor's smile froze. She pressed the activation switch. The prototype spun to life, the display screen showing the power output climbing higher than projected. Gasps rippled through the room. This is what the city can do when we listen to the forgotten, she continued. Every gust, every passing train power we've been throwing away. Andre stepped beside her. And every mind we've been throwing away, he added, his voice firm. The applause started slowly, then thundered through the hall. Victor clapped along stiffly, lips pressed tight. Later that afternoon, his office door slammed. You humiliated me, he hissed. Tiana stood her ground. You stole from me, I invested. That's what men like me do. He turned to Andre. And you, after everything I've given, you siding with her. Andre's tone was quiet steel. With truth, sir. Victor's gaze hardened. You're both finished here. Security will escort you out. They left together, silence thick as concrete. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright. So that's it, Tiana said numbly. They take it all again. Andre's eyes were distant. Not this time. What can we do? Prove it publicly, he said. Build our own unit. Live stream it. Once people see the truth, he can't bury it. She studied him. That'll make enemies? He shrugged. Already have one. For days they worked in an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, the air smelling of rust and old oil. Andre brought spare parts from the lab before his badge was deactivated. Tiana scavenged wiring and battery cells. Together, they rebuilt the turbine piece by piece. At night, as rain drummed on the tin roof, they talked. About the system that rewarded image over insight. About her mother's faith, his disillusionment. About starting over. You really think anyone will care? She asked one night. Andre looked up from the circuit board. You changed the math, Tiana. Math doesn't care who writes it. Eventually, the world catches up. She smiled faintly. You sound like a teacher. He grinned. Maybe I'm learning. When the final bolt was tightened, Tiana stepped back. The turbine gleamed faintly under the warehouse lights. Perfect but proud. She pressed the start key. The blades began to turn. Slow at first, then steady, feeding power into a string of work lamps. One by one, they flickered on, flooding the room with white light. Andre whispered, "It works." Tiana laughed, half sobbing. It always worked. They just didn't believe it could come from me. He reached over and clasped her hand. They will now, outside, somewhere across town. Victor Greaves poured another drink and called his lawyers. He didn't know it yet, but a quiet revolution had already started in a warehouse, powered by a wind that refused to be owned. 3 nights later, the warehouse buzzed like a living thing. Cables coiled across the floor. Laptop screens glowed with live-stream dashboards. The prototype turbine stood at the center, blades polished, sensors blinking in the half-light. Tiana Hayes checked the output meter one more time. It read, steady, clean power. Andre Lewis aimed his phone camera, the red recording light blinking. You sure about going live? He asked. Tiana nodded. If we wait, they'll bury us under paperwork. If we stream, the world decides. Andre hit start broadcast. The feed opened on her face, tired, determined, rain dripping from the warehouse roof behind her. My name is Tiana Hayes, she began, voice carrying the calm of someone past fear. 3 months ago, I was living under a bridge. Tonight, I'm going to light this building with wind the city throws away. She stepped aside and flipped the switch. The turbine whirred, then roared. Lamps along the wall blinked alive, one after another, until the room glowed. On the screen, comment lines exploded. Is this real? Homeless engineer. Where can we donate? Andre watched numbers climb 10,000 viewers, 50, 100. Within an hour, the link had jumped platforms. News anchors replayed the clip. Analysts dissected the design. Someone found the old patent draft Victor Greaves had filed without her name and posted it side by side with her live feed. By dawn, the hashtag Hayes turbine trended worldwide. Victor's phone rang until sunrise. When he finally answered a call from his legal team, their voices trembled. "She's everywhere, sir. Public opinion's turning. Investors are demanding clarification." He poured coffee with shaking hands. "Pull down the patent filing," he barked. "Too late. It's archived." The court already froze it pending investigation. For the first time in years, Victor Greaves had no script to follow in the warehouse. Tiana sat on the concrete floor, exhausted. Her phone buzzed, non-stop journalists, universities, venture firms. Andre handed her a thermos of coffee. "You did it," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "We did it, but they'll still come for us." He nodded. "Then we make the next move first." The next day they accepted an invitation to demonstrate the turbine at the city's civic plaza. Crews from 3 news networks set up cameras. Volunteers ran extension cords from the prototype to a row of floodlights. The mayor herself arrived, curiosity written across her face. Tiana stood before the crowd, wind tugging at her hair. "This isn't about me," she said. "It's about everyone who's been told their ideas don't count because of where they sleep or what they wear. The wind doesn't care who listens to it. We shouldn't either." She started the turbine. The lights flared. The crowd erupted. Children cheered. The mayor shook her hand and whispered, "Call my office tomorrow." Andre laughed under his breath. "Guess you just got a job offer." "Guess we did," she corrected. That night, back in the warehouse, they sat among coils of wire and half-empty pizza boxes, watching the city skyline. Tiny dots of light winked across rooftops, where other engineers had already begun testing her. Open source design. Andre broke the silence. "You know, I used to think innovation meant controlling something. Turns out it's about letting go." Tiana chuckled. "Wind lessons." He grinned. "Exactly." Her phone buzzed. Again a message from a small-town science teacher. "My students are building a Hayes turbine from recycled parts. Thank you for giving them hope." Tina read it twice, eyes glistening. "That's the kind of patent I wanted." Andre nodded. "The kind nobody can steal." Outside, a late train thundered past, sending a gust through the broken windows. The turbine in the corner spun of its own accord, lights flickering briefly to life. Tiana watched the blades turn. "Hear that?" she whispered. "The city's breathing again." Across town, Victor Greaves watched the same live broadcast from his penthouse. Reporters waited outside his gate, asking if he'd stolen the design. He turned off the television, stared at his reflection, and for the first time felt the hollow echo of a man who had mistaken ownership for creation. He poured another drink, then set it down untouched. By the week's end, universities requested lectures. The Energy Ministry announced an inquiry into fair innovation practices. More importantly, community groups began building their own small turbines with open blueprints. Tiana uploaded freely. She refused every corporate buyout. Instead, she and Andre drafted plans for a cooperative, Lab Hayes energy collective where youth from low-income neighborhoods could learn engineering for free. When reporters asked why she didn't cash in, she smiled, because the wind doesn't charge rent. That night, when the cameras finally left and silence settled over the warehouse, Andre turned to her. "What now?" Tiana looked up at the roof, listening to the soft creak of air through metal. "Now we build for real. Something bigger than both of us." He nodded. "You think we'll manage?" She grinned. "We already are." 6 months later, the warehouse that once smelled of rust and rain sang with the sound of creation. Workbenches lined the walls, each covered with half-built turbines, sensors, and coffee mugs. A mural stretched across one wall, a silhouette of Tiana Hayes facing into the wind. The words "power belongs to everyone" painted beneath. The Hayes Energy Collective had grown faster than anyone expected. Volunteers came from everywhere: retired engineers, high school students, single parents, people who had once been homeless like Tiana. The place buzzed with laughter, solder smoke, and purpose. Tiana moved through the room with a clipboard, checking progress. "Make sure the fins are angled 12 degrees, she called over the hum. "Too flat and you'll lose lift." A teenage girl looked up from her workstation. "Like this." Tiana leaned in. "Perfect. You just saved the city 3% energy loss." The girl grinned. "My mum says I'm finally good at wasting time on TikTok math." Tiana laughed. "Tell her you're recalibrating the future." Across the room, Andre adjusted a circuit panel. His once pristine suits had been traded for pea-slayer rolled waves and grease-stained jeans. He looked over as Tiana passed. "The city council signed the grant. We're officially recognized as a community energy partner." She froze, blinking. "Wait, officially?" He nodded. "Contracts, funding, and access to the municipal grid. You're about to power 1,000 homes, Tiana." For a moment, she didn't move. Then she hugged him, spontaneous, tight, grateful. "You kept your promise," she whispered. He smiled against her hair. "You kept your faith." That afternoon, cameras returned for one last broadcast. Not a confrontation this time, but a celebration. Children in bright safety vests stood beside new turbines mounted along the riverbank. Journalists called it the Windline Project, the city's first citizen-built renewable network. When the mayor handed Tiana the ceremonial key to the city, she shook her head gently. "I didn't do this alone," she said. "The people who believed when no one else would, they're the key." Applause rose. Behind her, Andre clapped quietly, pride in his eyes. A reporter asked, "What would you say to the people who once doubted you?" Tiana smiled. "That doubt is just wind. It pushes harder when you're moving in the right direction." Later that evening, as twilight bled across the skyline, Tiana and Andre sat on the roof of the old warehouse, now the collective's headquarters. Below them, the turbines along the river turned lazily, their lights blinking like fireflies. Andre passed her a thermos. "Still can't believe how far we came." Tiana took a sip. "Remember when I told you the wind follows you everywhere?" He nodded. "Yeah." She looked out over the city. "I finally understand why. It wasn't chasing me. It was waiting." He smiled. "For what?" "For me to stop running from myself." They fell into comfortable silence. The hum of turbines mixed with the distant sound of laughter from below. A soft breeze tugged at their clothes, cool and forgiving. "You ever think about Victor?" Andre asked quietly. Tiana nodded. "Sometimes. I read he retired, donated to a few scholarship funds. Guilt. Maybe redemption," she said. "We all need a second chance." "Even him." Andre studied her face. "You're not angry anymore." "I was," she admitted. "But anger's just another kind of wind. You can fight it, or you can let it turn your blades." He chuckled softly. "You and your metaphors." "Occupational hazard," she said with a smile. Down below, the lights brightened as power from the new grid pulsed through the system. The city glowed warmer, gentler. For the first time, entire neighborhoods once forgotten by investors lit up without blackouts. Andre's phone buzzed. A message from a rural cooperative in Ghana, asking to license the open-source design. Another from South Africa. Another from Detroit. "Tiana," he said, showing her the screen. "It's going global." She stared at the messages, breath catching. "The wind's spreading. Looks like you crushed the billionaire's crisis after all," he teased. She laughed softly. "No, Andre. We just reminded the world that ideas don't have owners, only caretakers." Much later, when the city slept and the river whispered below, Tiana stood alone on the roof. She closed her eyes and listened to the low hum of turbines, to the wind moving through the alleys, to the steady beat of life returning. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her memory. If the world won't open its doors, build your own. She smiled. I did, Mama. The wind brushed her face like an answer. Andre appeared beside her. Thinking again, always. He extended his hand. Come on, Engineer Hayes. The world's waiting. She took it, feeling the warmth of connection, the kind that built bridges stronger than steel. Together they walked down the metal stairs, the hum of turbines following like music above them. The night sky shimmered with the glow of 1,000 small lights, proof that, from the humblest beginnings, power could rise, spin, and spread across the world. The city exhaled, and the wind carried her name softly through its streets. Tiana Hayes.